Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
God gave us our senses. We should enjoy them. The Constitution gives us the right to express ourselves. We should feel free to exercise it. But there is also a moral obligation which calls upon us to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. This is Frank Agin. I'm the host of the Networking RX podcast. Welcome to the show. One of the things that was just kind of the ending of something that I wrote years ago. I actually wrote it back in 2006. I'm going to talk about it. But one of the things all of us humans have in common are our senses. We see the clouds in the sky, in the trees in the forest. We hear kids playing and dogs barking. We smell flowers, feel water, and taste what we put in our mouth. From there, we form opinions, right? We can conclude that the clouds look stormy and the trees beautiful. We can believe that the sounds of kids playing is joyful and a dog's barking just plain annoying, or vice versa. To us, the flowers can smell fresh. The water can feel cold or warm, and whatever we eat, delicious or really not to our liking. The beauty of the opinions in the United States is that as Americans, we have every right to express them, and we generally do. Watch the news. Oh my God, do we? But beyond that, people tell us that a particular computer is faster or a certain car is cool. We can hear that the Yankees are the team of the century, or the Dallas Cowboys, or whatever it might be. Depends on the season and what's happening. We might hear that Sylvester Stallone's the worst actor ever, or the Ohio State Marching Band is the best damn band in the land. So opinions are great and generally offer us tremendous value. They help us sift through literally volumes of information and dozens of options. I mean, can you imagine the world without opinions? I mean, you would be, with all the options we have out there with respect to cars, with respect to food, restaurants, our lives would grind to a halt trying to figure what we were going to do without that. So they really help us determine, what movie to see in our limited leisure time, and where to find the best coffee. So opinions are valuable. And while opinions generally provide value, it's one aspect of our lives where we shouldn't really rely on the opinions of others, and that's in forming opinions of people that we meet. From time to time in our networks, someone will share an opinion about somebody else, and you have to be very careful as to whether or not you're going to act on that opinion. Or make that opinion your own. There are statements like, he's not friendly, or she's consumed with herself. While people have the constitutional right to share those views, we need to resist the temptation to adopt those impressions as our own. Why? Well, let me share a story with you. And I shared this story in the book Foundational Networking, a book I wrote and released back in 2008. But I shared the story of when I first got what I call it my big boy office. When I left, I was practicing law, and I started out practicing law in a spare room in our house. And after about a year or so of that, I decided, I was going to get an office outside the house. I was going to be hiring somebody, the whole 9 yards, and it just made sense to have somebody outside an office outside the house. So I, with the help of a commercial realtor, rented a small space. It was a small house in Gahanna, Ohio, which is a suburb east of this, northeast of the city, and it's on Town Street in the old Gahanna area. And so it was a tiny house. It was 500 square feet. None of that really matters. But as I was moving in, one of the people that I knew in the organization that is now AmSpirit Business Connections, he had stopped by to just say hi and give me well wishes on my new office. It was a big deal. Not, but it was. And so he was out. We were standing on the porch, and it was a beautiful February day, early February, maybe late January when I signed the lease. And we were standing on the porch, I remember, and the gentleman who owned the business next door, an accountant, was just pulling up and walking to the office. And the guy who was on the porch with me was a gentleman, was a sales rep for Paychecks. He sold payroll. And the Paychecks rep turned to me and he said, "Oh my God, that guy is a, you know, expletive a-hole." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" He says, "Oh yeah, last year he threw me out of his office." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what kind of a neighborhood did I move into?" I'm thinking to myself. And he didn't really elaborate on the whole thing. And I'm just like, "Okay, wow, thanks for letting me know." And he went about his business and I went about mine. Now it's early February, so my neighbor, Mike, that was his name, and I'll continue to share the story. Mike was an accountant, and so Mike is headed into you know the heat of the busy season, the tax season, and it's winter, and we're not seeing much of each other. All I know about Mike is what the Paychecks rep told me. This guy is a-hole, and that's just kind of resonating in my mind. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm nervous. And we would see each other. Mike and I would see each other, and we would wave, and it wasn't till spring that snow had melted, the temperatures had warmed up, and I happened to be out there one day. I was just outside. Maybe I was mowing or doing something. I had responsibilities for caring for the yard in this small house. And Mike was there and waved, and the busy season was over, so it had to be April, it had to be May. And he called to me and he said, "Hey, would you help me?" And I'm like, "Sure. Why wouldn't I?" And so I went over there and I helped him put a canoe on the top of his van or his SUV or whatever he was driving. He was an accountant. He worked hard during the busy season and really tried to enjoy his time off with outdoor activities, canoeing, so on and so forth. So we got to talking and finally got to meet. That's where I learned his name was Mike, and he was an accountant. He learned I was an attorney, and we chatted. And type of work that I mainly did business stuff, and I had done some tax stuff, and we just small talk, right? We just had small talk, and he went about his day, and I went about mine, and just life kind of continued on. And we continued to wave at each other when he was out. I would come over and talk, or he would come over and talk, and we had a lot of great conversations over the years. And he would refer me clients. He had a lot of clients, a lot of unique clients. He had been practicing accounting for years in this small suburb and knew lots of people and was really connecting me to a ton of different people. And I would, from time to time, help him with his canoe, or help him with other things. And but at one point we were talking, and I forget what it was. It doesn't really matter, but the moment was right, and I just said, "I got to say, Mike, I really have enjoyed meeting you, but I shared the experience I had with the payroll guy." And this is what the payroll guy said. I mean, I can't believe it. I can't believe you would throw somebody out of the office. And he says, "You know what? I like payroll people. I really do. I refer all my clients to payroll people. I don't want to do payroll. But yes, I did ask the guy to leave. He came at the worst possible time. He just showed up unannounced, with candy or donuts or something like that. Like I was supposed to welcome him, and it was just a horribly stressful moment. And I didn't behave properly, but I asked him to leave, and I wasn't nice about it. It just, he just showed up. And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes total sense. And what I learned in that moment is that we really need to draw our own conclusions. Cups of coffee, computers, they're all items that roll off some means of standard production. And it makes it relatively easy for us to rely on the sweeping generalizations of others, to figure out, whether to buy a cup of coffee or a computer or a car. But no two people are the same. We all come in, different shapes and sizes. And even amongst those similar shapes and sizes, there's a tremendous diversity of talents, temperaments, and convictions. And, social scientists, they certainly do their best to try and categorize the human species. But the fact of the matter is we're all different. And there's really no means of standard production of humans. And so if none of us are the same, certainly our interactions with others, will share the same diversity. If person A is not the same person, same as person B, it's almost a certainty that their interactions and opinions of person C will be vastly different. Even if person A and person B are substantially similar, the situations under which they will deal with person C might be wildly different. My experience with Mike, the CPA, the payroll guy really wasn't, he was a great guy. I try to be a great guy. Mike's a great guy. They just cross paths at the wrong possible time. And so we need to keep that in mind as we're working, as we're meeting new people. People are going to offer their opinions on others. And you really need to take that with a grain of salt, because they have had an experience that's different. It was a different time. It was a different place. It was different circumstances. It was different. And I'm not saying you can't have that in the back of your mind to compare against. And it's always good to know certain things. Hey, be careful in this. This person's a hard negotiator. Those things are nice to know. But when you're ultimately forming an opinion about somebody, you need to figure it out yourself. You can't rely on somebody else to do it. And if you do rely on somebody else, you might be disappointed. You might really be disappointed. I'm very, very glad that I formed my own opinion of Mike and really kind of developed a friendship with him over the years, because it certainly meant, he certainly referred me a lot of business. And it's not all about business, don't get me wrong. But he connected me into the business community like I would have taken me years more to connect myself. It was just a wonderful experience, and it's just because I drew my own conclusions with respect to him. So just something to keep in mind. Remember, we're looking to add quality people to our stable of franchisees. This is a unique franchise opportunity that it's geared for aspiring entrepreneurs or professionals to add on to what they're already doing. Again, all of our franchisees do something else for just a couple hours in the morning, a few mornings a week. Our franchisees operate the AmSpirit Business Connections program. The rest of the week are these franchisees. Again, all of our franchisees do something else. They're accountants, attorneys, financial advisors, realtors, coaches, consultants, travel agents. Mary Kay Reps runs the gamut. If you're interested, contact me. There's an email in the show notes, or use the one we provide at the end of the podcast.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connections. All rights reserved.